Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein. You are listening to The Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we discuss the unfair go-to-market motion people like Chris Walker, Adam Robinson, and David Cancel are using to accelerate their businesses. Before we jump into the show, today's episode is brought to you by Everstage, the top-rated sales commissions platform on G2, Gartner Peer Insights, and Trustradius, with more than 2,000 reviews from customers like Diligent, Wiley, Trimble, and more. Visit everstage.com and mention Revenue Formula to unlock a personalized sales compensation strategy session with one of Everstage's RevOps experts. And now, enjoy the show.
So, I had a Christmas lunch Friday with a few folks, and I was really happy because Saturday we only had one thing in the calendar, and it was at 1 to 3 p.m. kid's birthday bowling. I was like, you know what? I can do 2 hours of torture in bowling. That'll be fine, and then just home, sleep, chill. I missed a part of the invitation, which was, and then we'll go to our place. And I was like, no. So, yeah, I was pretty dead yesterday, actually. And I think that's part of the big shift. It's not just, us recording from home, figuring out all the gear. It's also the whole ritual we used to have around it. It's just been reset. You know what I mean?
Like going to work, being productive.
Just the commute when you kind of mentally prepare and reset and all that stuff versus you texting me in the car. It's like, hey, can I come to your place today? Because our place is no-go. Very different indeed. But one of the things we wanted to talk about is building a founder brand, because there's a new playbook, and we recently talked with Adam Robinson.
Yep.
Had a great episode with him. Definitely recommend you go back and check that out. He basically reveals his big churn problem.
Yes.
But we wanted to talk specifically about building a founder brand, because that is kind of the emerging new playbook.
Yes. And I think kind of to put this in the right draw for everyone. So obviously, there's a bunch of people that are doing this before they actually start the company or while they're starting the company, right? And I think our audience is probably heavier on the, hey, we already at scale. We have 5, 10, 15 million in revenue. And, how do we get to 100? So how does this founder brand thing here kind of fit into this? I think it is not necessarily too late to start building something like this.
No.
Right? It's not. So maybe send this show to your founder, have him or her listen to this.
If you are the founder.
Yeah, exactly. and maybe just learn a little bit, what the people are talking about on LinkedIn when they say founder brand, how does it actually work, kind of demystify the whole thing. We're going to give a couple of examples.
Yeah.
And I think after this episode, I think people will have a much clearer understanding of what this thing is actually about and why they should probably be doing it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what it actually is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the founder's brand. Boom, done. Next on the no. So I think predominantly folks have focused on marketing the brand of the company. So think about a Coca-Cola or whatever. You want to market that logo and that product versus, there's a company that has a founder or a CEO. What would happen if we market that person? So I think one of the most universally known concepts in SaaS would be Mark Benioff, right? A lot of folks have seen him, especially when there's been some political change or legislative change. He's been out there coming on because he knew it mattered to his massive, staff, basically, right? So this would be on their mind, and he kind of had to.
And I think this is the very high-level version of a founder brand.
Yeah.
Right? And I think just be like Mark Benioff
or Elon Musk.
Exactly. Or Mark Cuban. That's what so yes, I would say that also qualifies as a founder brand by definition, because there's a brand of the founder. But I think today we want to break it a little bit down. And it's a little bit silly to mention myself kind of after we mentioned kind of those three
ex-founder
folks.
Brand.
But for example, I did it via Growblocks at that, right? And then there, where did we learn it from? What did we copy, so to speak? We didn't come up with this. We actually copied Chris Walker, and we read literally the book called Founder Brand by Dave Gerhardt, who was previously the VP Marketing at Drift, super early on. And now more recently emerged Adam Robinson, which is kind of weird on the show the other day. again, listen to it. And while we're going through this churn problem, he also is revealing how the founder brand has been helping him to kind of figure out his churn problem, right? So there are some more down-to-earth versions of a founder brand than just be like Elon, easy.
And I think it's also, for me, it's when you have the founder being out there sharing his or her point of view on behalf of the business, and also the mission and vision that they're on to attract basically the audience you're also trying to sell to, quite frankly.
And maybe kind of let's start with this, right? So when we started Growblocks, we were 2 commercial founders, and the product wasn't there yet.
Yeah,
it's basically was going to take it a while, and it ended up taking some time.
Yeah,
and around this time, you and I also talked, and we were like, well, if we can't sell a product, let's just sell you, Tony. Yeah. Right? That was literally, that was the conversation. And back then we were actually thinking about it more in a way of like, okay, why are our initial customers of ours? Well, they know us, they trust us, they know that we're capable.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, well, we're running out of people that we know by name.
Yeah.
How can we expand this audience?
Yeah.
And actually the idea then was like, well, let's try and use this founder brand process in order to achieve this. Right. And that's literally how it started.
Yeah.
And then I think this is also a much more tangible and reasonable way of how other people actually can get started in this process.
Yeah.
Right. So let's just maybe kind of one by one talk about these things a little bit. So the first thing for me personally, after having followed Chris Walker for a while, just start posting on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to talk about all of, those are the 5 things.
People, Justin Welsh, check him out.
Yes.
Just search for a few of the, let's say, LinkedIn experts.
Yeah.
And try and follow some and see what you're like. There's so much advice on great content.
And the only tip I want to give is just get going.
Yeah.
Just start.
Yeah.
Just start getting out there. And I think this is probably also, if I'm thinking kind of maybe a VP of sales listening right now, and you're struggling with building pipeline, and you're thinking like, hey, my CEO could maybe help me a little bit here. Yes, a founder brand or that CEO could help you right now, right? To get this going after 10 or 15 million, it's probably going to be a little bit difficult, but it can totally be done.
Yeah.
What do you think, though, Mikkel, are the requirements you need to have in a founder for that to potentially even start and work?
So I think if you don't have a point of view, which will be probably not the case when you have a founder, they will always have some kind of point of view out there that's relevant to the audience. I think that's if they struggle articulating that, it's going to be a bit difficult. But then if you're pre-10 million, you can basically help articulate it by posting. But if you're post, you might not want to do that.
So a point of view is really a very specific opinion about a problem that you're actually kind of trying to address, right? And trying to solve. For Growblocks, as an example, right, we had the opinion that revenue operations should be more strategic.
Yeah.
That was kind of our point of view. And then once we kind of, started to, gather around this point of view, it was also easier to push against the status quo, which then like system admins or CRM admins or something like this, right? So that we could try out. And we saw how it was resonating. It was like, hey, that works out. Let's kind of keep doing this, right? For other organizations, those point of views might be completely different.
Yeah.
And if you don't have them, you really don't have a story to tell. No. But it is something you can develop over time.
Yeah, you can definitely develop it. It's not like when you and I started, it was, hey, our point of view is Revo should be system admins. No. I think we started first off with the blank page problem, right? What are we going to write about? And we just started. It was literally you and I every morning pushing each other to post. Obviously, I had the agenda to get you posting, to get the business grown. And I was just there as, the person running along with you to make sure you actually ran, right? Yeah. So like that was a mental trick. I think you can develop it over time. And as you post, you'll start noticing patterns in terms of what do people actually engage with, who are those potential buyers and desired customers you want. And you'd also start following them. So I would lurk in every single revenue operations community, and you'll start noticing some of that information you're picking up on almost coalesce to the point where, okay, they talk about tools all the time. And
I was about to say, right, kind of, we were basically trying to get to know our buyer. Through this process. And, both of us were just so incredibly bored by this field in HubSpot or Salesforce with HubSpot or, data cleaning or the sales forecast.
Yeah.
We're
Territory planning.
We were so incredibly bored by all of those topics.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, this is what everyone is talking about, but we just really don't want to talk about it. Which then, that very stupid, selfish approach to this actually helped us to figure out, well, that is actually our niche. And this is actually what we want to talk about, right?
And I think it's just like you're building software that has to be differentiated. The point of view kind of also has to be differentiated. And your audience also kind of has to care about it. So I think that's the requirement number one you need in place. I think the second piece is you actually want to have a founder who does want to do it, period. I think you can bring a horse to water, but it ain't gonna drink just because you do it. Right. So for me, that is super critical. You and I tested out, basically have an agency, do a ton of the content on LinkedIn, and it just never was as great. I think it's same when I would create some of it for you. It was never as great when it was just your voice, your insight, because you're the one out there talking with potential customers, potential investors and partners, etc. So you're the one who get the insight and can kind of distill that onwards.
There was one good thing about it, which is it did happen. It ended up actually happening. I can see it just with myself, right? I had times where I was very consistent posting and now it kind of tapered off a little bit. I'm kind of thinking about a lot of other things. But the consistency is in many cases the more important thing. Right? Sure, you need to have a topic you want to talk about and so forth, but being there, showing up, making people almost expect that they're going to see a post of yours. So if they engage with one post, they immediately get served the next one. Like this is kind of part of the whole thing. And I know for sure that not many founders are so super keen on that stuff.
No.
Like, I think especially when you're 10, 15 million, I think they will probably see it as a waste of time. Like, hey, why should I be doing this? There's so many other things to do. But also it's like, to a little bit of a degree, it's a little bit also of an excuse. Right? So one particular example, and I think the agency we worked with, they also worked with him, which was the founder, CEO of Clary, like the sales forecasting vendor.
I don't know if that was public actually, but anyway.
No, I don't think they told us. I think we pieced it together ourselves.
We've assumed.
Because we saw their setup and then we saw his setup. It was like, looks like the same setup here. So that's why, I think we can share this because we figured it out. And the thing is when he started this, he was already at 100 million in AR. Let's just sink the in. And I think one of the main reasons why he started it was his VP marketing, later CMO, Kyle Coleman.
Also had on the show.
Who we also had on the show. He was basically, while the CEO was at 100 million, Kyle was at 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. And basically he posted something about forecasting and boom, they had a full pipeline. Right? And basically kind of the realization was like, hey, wait a minute, if we have like two of those producers here, that would be fucking awesome, right? And I think in order to kind of make that step, doesn't need to be LinkedIn. No. Like you can go on Twitter, you can go on Instagram, wherever your folks are. Obviously, kind of you need to find the place where they're hanging out. Chances are they're on one of those media platforms though.
So I think if you want to sell this to the CEO, there's going to be so many objections. Ultimately, you want to navigate what is the most important thing it can help with. Is it going to be important for the business to raise money soon? Or is it to fill the pipeline or something else? Because usually the founder brand will actually help with a lot of those pieces. If it's breaking into a market, guess what? It's helpful to have that brand do it, right? Now, the other reason, I'm just going to touch on it real quick because I think it's going to be a thing for folks here. But another reason could be, hey, I'm not comfortable or I don't feel good enough to speak on a podcast. Could be a thing. I just want to point out, there's an introvert out there called Damesh Shah. Who's that? Yeah, who is that? Like co-founder of HubSpot, that small little SaaS company on the NASDAQ, right? So he is very active. He's very active out there. He's been building his personal brand for years. Sure, he's not comfortable being on stage because he's a massive introvert, but he is doing it because I think he understands what it can do for the business.
But also, and I think this is probably, what stops people is, he found his voice. Like Adam Robinson found his voice. And, Dave Garrett has his voice with marketers and so forth. once you find your voice, it's going to be second nature to post online and kind of get a good response. And yes, you want to push out your point of view, but you also want to kind of do it in the right way. And I think Dharmesh over the years just has been getting incredibly comfortable, you know, posting on LinkedIn or on Twitter and kind of pushing his stuff out, right? And people know him by now and react to kind of how he's talking about things, and it just works out. But those are all examples of people who have done this successfully, right? This is, let me just say it the other way around. This is super helpful for someone that is just starting their business. Like we can talk more about Growblocks and how we use it there. But this is also extremely helpful for someone that is already a business at scale and is trying to find additional ways to generate pipeline. Because that's, I think, what this is primarily going to be about.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we unpack like what is inside the playbook then that we're seeing as at least what folks are using now for more modern go-to-market, I just have to say, like, the sheer amount of distribution you can get, which is probably the single most common reason businesses fail, honestly, is lack of distribution.
Yes.
You need to build a product that actually works, and then you need to distribute it. And I think it's even in the 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, right? I think that's a massively overlooked piece. And then, yes, there's all the efficiencies like you and I were talking about initially. Once we started seeing the founder brand working, you didn't need to introduce yourself anymore, right? So the level
time
of
saved
trust,
on calls.
More time pitching. No, but just like the trust you would gain, massive. And when you were talking about earlier, like if you're the VP sales, you should get the CEO. It's like, no, you could also start posting yourself, right?
That's very true.
To build trust around you. So I think, you know, just think a bit about the distribution you could get. Yes, employer branding, great, attracting VCs and press and blah, but I think this is really how you should see it.
No, I mean, the other thing is also, you know, Cal Coleman from Clary, now at Copy AI. Do you guys think there was a bit of a consideration from the Copy AI folks to be like, should we take this guy as our CMO with over 100,000 followers? Yeah, I think that was part of the consideration, right? So, I mean, to your point, if you're not the CEO founder, you should still try and build this brand, by the way. It will help you get employed for sure. Yeah, for sure. And yes, it will probably help you in your current position where you're on as well.
So I think we've talked a bit about LinkedIn is part of this modern playbook, right? It is where many potential buyers are. If you're selling software, chances are they're going to be on LinkedIn, right? Why is LinkedIn the interesting network compared to all the others? Why is it LinkedIn?
So I haven't really deeply thought about it, actually, because for me, it was immediately clear it's going to be LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But it's basically rather a place for professionals to share professional stuff.
True.
Like Instagram is different. Twitter is a bit broader, I feel. And that was kind of the reason for me, actually. Also, when we started, Twitter was still, I think, capped at 128 characters or something like this.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, you could almost do blog posts, right?
So I can also tell you the main reason many folks, if you're just starting out, you want to go for LinkedIn is it's really difficult to penetrate the networks called X, TikTok, Instagram. It is really difficult actually to succeed there because there's so many people posting content on LinkedIn. You have a lot of folks there who just go and look for some jobs, like a couple of pieces, but aren't posting. So the ratio is very beneficial to be a creator on that platform, which is why that is definitely one you want to consider and kind of go for, right? So
I think the other reason is you obviously have their professional credentials there.
Yeah.
Right? Because for many folks, LinkedIn still is not a network. It's like where I keep my CV updated, basically. But that gives you an opportunity to connect proactively to those folks and you know exactly where they're working, the role that they're working, kind of their past. I'm not so super familiar with X and Twitter, but you know, you have some of that stuff in the bio, but it's just not so super crystal clear.
It's way more difficult. It's way more scattergun, to be honest. There are different benefits for different platforms, to be honest, right? The Instagram, way more visual, right? If you go for TikTok, well, then you better be comfortable on video. You know, so I think those are pieces, but fundamentally, just to say, it is a bit easier, quotation marks, to, I think, succeed on LinkedIn than some of the others. And then you can always start transferring the audience over, which, you know, we can talk about it if we get a time. But
so this was kind of a mini, you know, which network to go for kind of intro. What else do we do and what else is actually Dave Garrett recommending in the founder brand?
Well, I don't know if he necessarily is recommending it, but we decided to create this podcast.
Yes.
Obviously, right? And I think the rationale was, well, on LinkedIn, you can reach a lot of folks at scale. But I would constantly find myself having read a awesome post on LinkedIn. And then, who was it? Because I really want to find it again. And I just couldn't, for the life of me, remember who wrote the dang post, right? So I was realizing, well, while you get a lot of reach in a very little time and effort, even I would say, the challenge is you want them to remember you. And text is not necessarily the best format for that. Yeah. So having something rich probably would be. So let's say we reach someone on LinkedIn with a text post, but then they listen to 30 minutes of a podcast episode. Probably they will remember something, because also we're super weird in this show, to be honest. We say some crazy stuff, right?
But it's also, so our rationale was actually LinkedIn is for reach, and then podcast is for basically trust, right? Building trust, kind of getting to know us and so forth, which then helps with the reach out, which then helps with like maybe purchasing our software and so forth, right? And I think you can do it without the podcast. Yes, there are kind of plenty of examples for this. But it does help you, shape your POV instead of just writing it out.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think it helped with me a lot was you get invited to other shows, you get invited to webinars, you get invited to speak at conferences, you're included in press releases. I mean, the list goes fucking on.
Yeah, I was just going to say one piece, if you don't do something like the podcast or something similar, by the way, it can be different, but then collaborating with folks who has the ear of the audience you want to reach, really difficult. Yes. Really, really difficult. I remember when we were at Falcon Social, Falcon IO, then later Brandwatch, wasn't there when it was called Brandwatch, but pitching our CEO to speak at a conference or join a podcast even, what would always happen is the first thing I get back is, yeah, we can do that. You can get like a 15-minute slot. It's going to be 20,000 euros.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, how many people even attend this thing? On average, like 50. And I know that was bullshit. It was half, right? So it's like, are you kidding me? And it's just no way that was going to happen. I think with you, it was all of a sudden different because we had a show and we could just start by inviting the people we wanted on, which, also requires some effort, obviously, right? But that was the starting point, and then getting you on the shows all of a sudden easier because you were affiliated with Carl Coleman, Jaco Vanderkoy, and all these folks.
Yes. And I think another benefit of this is also, and we do this ourselves, when we look for guests, and we got lots of guest inbounds, right? We're getting all of those influencer managers that are basically like trying to place the CEOs on some shows. What we're always also looking for is like, well, do they have an online presence? Yeah. Have they spoken publicly a lot? Do they maybe have a show? Because I can tell you, it's such a night and day difference between someone that has been doing this, I don't want to say professionally, but like has been doing this media stuff before versus someone that, is able to talk to a crowd of people, but just hasn't had this media training yet, right? And, I still remember, who was that? I think it was Sungram from Go-to-Market Partners. And I think we were either poorly prepared or just shitty. And we gave him questions that, when I listened to the episode, I was like, I don't think it was great questions actually, but he was such an incredible professional that he, took those mediocre questions and returned awesome answers. Right? Yeah. And that is kind of the back and forth you want to have.
And it's the same if you notice it. If you haven't checked him out, check out Chris Walker and just notice how he operates, especially when he joins other shows, because he has maybe, I would say 10 talk tracks per quarter that just goes on repeat. And I think he also knows the golden rule of marketing, which is you have to repeat the message up until the point where you get a little bit sick, right? You want to throw a little bit up and then you do it a little bit more, right? That's the level you want to do it at. And so I think that's, I would definitely consider, I don't know actually if I would consider a podcast today. It's a lot of work. It's difficult. It really depends on whether you have the knack for it, whether you have the idea for how it's going to stand out, but definitely a great vehicle to start collaborating.
Also, out of 1,000 podcasts, 999 don't get to 20 episodes.
Yeah.
By the way.
So that's true, yeah. That's true. And but it's also because it's a big ask, right? It's a big ask to go to a founder CEO and say, hey, we're going to publish weekly. This minimum going to be half an hour episode. So I need you like for an hour every week.
So the thing is then, well, why do you need to do the podcast with a founder? Well, number one, obviously you want to build a founder brand. So kind of he or she should be there. But also because it's the CEO, because it's the founder, usually those folks end up having really cool thoughts and kind of talk to really cool other people. And there's some interesting stuff there. And you don't need to sit there and have like content sessions on figuring this. Sometimes it's just kind of, we did just prompting. You guys just prompted me with questions, and sometimes it was a good prompt, sometimes it wasn't. And sometimes there was a great story coming out. It's like, oh, wow, we can do a post from this. We can do an episode from this. We can do a newsletter from this. And when you have those subject matter experts, basically, in the company, this is then the way to leverage that.
I mean, this is the whole other part of the exercise. We're going straight to the channel level almost, but it's like, what are you going to talk about, right? And generally, there's two approaches you can, probably three, but there's two approaches you can take. One is just to document what is happening at the business, which can be interesting in itself because the founder will be, as you're saying, potentially involved in some very interesting conversation. The other is to share expertise, which can be tricky because is the person really an expert in the field? When do you exhaust the theme? You will actually, you yourself, are you the expert? So can you interview the person, etc.? The last option you can simplify things with is curate stuff, right? Yeah. So just wanted to throw that out there real quick. If podcasting is not a thing for you, like I said, there's going to be a medium that is better for some people than others. Some people are great at narration. Like think about Yako. We talk about he's such a great orator. Like he is truly great at telling a story. I don't know if he's a great copywriter though. Like, does he write a great blog post? Really? Truly? Is he that person? I would probably say no. There's a few other people where I've read their posts and I've just gone like, man, this was a great read. Like truly a great read, right? And I think that's where you can lean into the strength. If you have a founder who's really great at writing, probably chances are they also enjoy it, by the way, then maybe a newsletter is the way to go. Yeah. Because actually owning the audience is what's unique about a newsletter. On LinkedIn, they could choose to change the algorithm today and make it fully pay to play if they wanted to. Podcast, same. The whole thing could just die if Spotify and Apple chooses to make some changes, right? Yeah. But the newsletter, if people opt it in, then you can do whatever you want. I mean, almost do whatever you want, right? But
the thing is, right, that at least I'm seeing is whatever the company does, if you have a strong founder brand, you are able to just amplify this so easily and so much more, right? So we had product launches. We posted it on the GrowBlogs LinkedIn page. Yeah. Nothing happened. I posted the same thing. It blew up, right? From that, we got interest. From that, we got kind of inbounds. Yeah. We used my LinkedIn and the LinkedIn following to basically have demo snippets that we kind of published. Every Wednesday or something, there was a demo snippet. People learned more and more and more what the product is doing without needing to go to the website and so forth, right? There's so many benefits of having this megaphone and using it. And also from this coming from a reliable, believable, trustworthy source that I just want to kind of point out again, this is, even if you're at scale, even if you're at 10 million plus, this is, I think, a pipeline building mechanism.
Yeah, it is.
It is a pipeline building mechanism that people just haven't kind of used yet, right? And if the founder does that, actually, I think it can be extremely powerful, right? It's also for you as a sales leader, go-to-market leader, a way to kind of lean into. Like we had, folks from our team go on demos, and it was so much easier even for them to relate. Yeah. Because there was this thing already, right? Yeah. So sometimes we were even sitting in the studio, doing the demo in the studio where we recorded, and people brought this up, and then we just pointed the camera on and kind of showed the microphones, right? And people were like, oh, this is, and there's so many, surrounding effects here that I think can really help you find another revenue stream. Actually, that's how I would see the whole thing. It's another way to generate cash.
Yeah. And I think Adam Robinson also made a really cool point, which is, well, once you've built the audience, you just need to figure out what are you going to build for them to sell.
So right? this is a completely, different approach, by the way.
Yeah, but it's also like what a lot of folks do is stealth startup. And I've always kind of hated it. I get that up to a point you don't want to announce if it just doesn't work. And maybe today is slightly different to have something that's completely broken and go live. You can still do marketing.
Yes.
Even though you're stealth. You can still advertise the problem. You can still advertise the founders, even the company. You don't have to show the solution yet. And I think that's the difference here, that actually building that audience, you're wielding an immense amount of power.
There's also, I think this is a Seth Godin kind of thing. I'm not sure kind of how old this is now, but he was talking about the tribe, tribal marketing or something like this. And he was talking about build the tribe and then build something for the tribe.
Go to the bowling alley.
And this is what this is.
Yeah, it is.
Right? You build the tribe and then you build something for them, which is, in funny ways. So, I mean, kind of we bought the show, we're kind of using this.
Yeah.
But also maybe want to do something else, maybe get a real job or maybe, start another business or something like this. This is an audience that we can leverage for the next thing also, right? Yeah. And this is kind of this is an asset that you as an individual have. Whether or not you're a go-to-market leader right now or a founder, there's an asset that you have individually that you can also leverage, next time or, next job, next venture, next whatever, right?
It's transferable. And it's also like, think about buying from someone. In B2B, you don't buy from a brand anymore.
Yeah,
you're true. Buying from a person. And therefore, it's pretty dang helpful to have a person being front and center rather than a logo.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, I almost want to leave it at that, because that's going to be immensely helpful for the entire team. Not just, it's not just an ego inflation boost thing. It is, in fact, going to help the sales team. And also, obviously, it gives marketing a ton to do. All of a sudden, if the CEO is out there marketing the vision, marketing the solution, it gives so much leverage.
To a degree, right? You can either send this episode to your founder or you can send the episode to your VP marketing.
Yeah.
Because, running this track with a founder, if you do this successfully, this is a content goldmine for the marketing team.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to make their job so much easier. You can probably let go of 5 content writers and just have AI and someone else do it. Basically taking all of that content stream and distributing it across all of the different assets you have, right? Yeah. So I think the way people should more and more think about this is you have outbound, you have inbound, you have partnerships, and then, self-prospecting or whatever I'm forgetting. And then you have founder brand.
That's it.
I think that's another thing you kind of need to think about. And the beauty is almost everyone can do it. And the real reason, like, you're going to have this conversation with the CEO maybe, and he or she's going to be like, no, I don't have time, blah. The real reason why they don't want to do it is because it potentially is fucking embarrassing.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's
like they put something on LinkedIn, crickets, nothing happens at all. And then it's like, oh, but I'm a hotshot CEO, but no one is listening. Totally get it. But that will be the reason why people don't do it.
And that's also like, even Messi, he had his first football game at some point. Probably one of the first couple of games was a bit embarrassing, Maybe he scored an own goal, something like that. You need to learn through the process.
So. No.
You think he just
Messi
came out of the womb and then like, boom.
Yes, that's I think exactly what happened there. But no, I mean, so, I think that's the real reason why people don't do it. Really? Oh, then there's one other reason. We're not allowed to kind of mention the logo, but they do crazy stuff. And you know what? They just have the luxury of not needing this.
Yeah, they're crazy successful.
Like, that's the other thing. Yeah. It's like, why wouldn't you do it as a founder? Well, sorry, I don't need that part of the pipeline that much.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. We're growing too fast already. Yeah. We need to, decline demos.
Oh, you're 1 in a billion.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yes.
I think that's it.
That's it already. I mean, I think this was a bit like kind of a left field episode, actually. But honestly, folks, if you're struggling with pipeline, which, everyone is, besides 2 people, this is another way to boost
Or if you're RevOps who just want to become more strategic, right?
That's right. I mean, lots of, different topic, different time. Everyone, hit this follow button, the subscribe button. Sure. We really love to see actually that count going up. And thanks everyone for listening, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.